Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel, and welcome to a very special game that I decided to show today on my YouTube chess channel. It's a gameplay by the top grandmaster Wesley against the former world champion and probably one of the best chess players in history, Garry Kasparov. This game was really incredible. It was a blitz game, although, but still I wanted to show it because I was motivated a little bit now by the recent performances by Wesley in this Magnus Carlsen Invitational tournament. Although Wesley finished on the 4th place, it doesn't matter. I think Wesley played the best game in the tournament. I think also that Wesley showed us great attacking performances in chess, and that's why I studied a little bit more his games. I watched a little bit more his career, and then I found this beauty, and of course I wanted to show you that game immediately on here on my channel. So as I said, I was really motivated by the recent games by Wesley. It was really incredible how he played to one particular moment of the tournament. I think the match game in the semifinals that he lost against Anish Giri brought him really down. Then he couldn't perform his best chess against Magnus Carlsen. Although of course Wesley recently one match game against Magnus Carlsen in the finals. So recently also Wesley won a great tournament. So of course the 4th place I think is also perfectly fine. Anish Giri is I think the deserved winner. Anish Giri played really outstanding chess in the Magnus Carlsen Invitation. So let's now skip to the brutal game here by Wesley against the GOAT, maybe Garry Kasparov. Here knight to f3 play by Wesley, g6 by Garry Kasparov. Of course Garry is waiting a little bit. He wants to build basically a similar structure like in the King's Indian, so he's going into sort of a modern defense setup, but his game will basically transpose into normal King's Indian. And now usually you play the move knight to f6, then we have knight to c3, and we would then have maybe the classical variation of the King's Indian. But Garry goes now into a more direct way. He plays the so-called Robach defense, and the Robach defense is actually battle immediately around the square d4. And what you don't want to do is of course force here some moves in the center. You don't want to advance the pawns like here d5, because then actually black could build with c5 or e5 already blocked and compact pawn structure in the center, and then we'll build maybe f4, f5, f4 ideas like in the normal King's Indian. So you don't want to expose yourselves with pawn moves. What you want to do is of course develop. Development is very important in chess. You have to bring all of your minor pieces into the game. Here you see Garry Kasparov goes with the move knight to c6, and if you try d5 it's actually not so good I think, because after bishop to f3 you could risk here to have really a bad bishop situation. And the problem is also that black could actually go knight to d4 and will cement this knight on a very active square. Now the bishop is attacked. You cannot actually counterattack the knight here with bishop to e3. You would love to play of course that move. Maybe you would love to give up of course this bad bishop for a good knight in the center, but actually after knight to f3 you see your pawn on b2 is hanging. So that's why you shouldn't actually advance the pawn. That's why this knight to c6, I like to call it sometimes the provocative move. We are playing a piece there. We want now this piece to get attacked, but of course with no new attacking opportunities here for black. So that's why this provocative move was very tricky by Garry Kasparov. It's of course the main theory of the Robach, but as I said, I wanted to show you that you shouldn't actually push the pawn on d5. Here Wesley plays a great move, a compact move. He centralizes his pieces. Whenever you feel there is some dynamics going on in the center all over the board, then you should play your pieces towards the pieces should be sort of glued together, because now knight to d4 doesn't work, because we'll simply play knight takes d4, and you see now after bishop to e2 we could actually recapture with the knight, and our knight is not hanging on anymore on d4. So it was a tricky also here continuation by Wesley, knight to d2, and now Kasparov plays the normal King's Indian move, the move e5, and then if the center gets closed he's trying to play the move f5, and here d5 finally, because we have now reached it's not the same but a similar structure like in the classical or the orthodox variation of the King's Indian. If you try now, for instance, from black's perspective, to play the move bishop to f3, we could go knight to f3, and after knight to d4 it seems so that maybe black could build the attack simply around the square d4, but actually it would be very risky. I think from this point on white is much better. Knight to d4, and of course e takes d4, and okay, there's no way maybe now to attack this pawn twice, because b2 again would be very risky. You risk then d3, discover attack on the rook here by the, on the long diagonal by the dark square bishop. But you, I think, have to simply leave this pawn like this and simply go maybe here something like castling after c5. Okay, black has cemented here the pawn, but actually what we could do now is to create space on the king side with the support of these two bishops. I think white has a dominant position. We could even search for maybe e5 and then f5 pawn breaks, so even with some pawn sacrifices, just in order to get this bishop's work with the support of the rook, with the potential support of the queen. I think white is much better. So after the move e5, we see d5, and here Garry Kasparov goes with knight to e7. I'm going to flip the board a little bit, because you see now what's the main issue. I think in white's perspective, black will go maybe something like bishop to d7, then we'll play f5, knight to f6, and even f4, and we'll have this common, I think, King's Indian attack. And you know how great Garry Kasparov was in the King's Indian, and that's why I think the next couple of moves were really great by Wesley. So he prevented here, I think, Garry Kasparov to go into his favorite lines. And here first Wesley played the move h3. We have bishop to d7. Now you see we're threatening here already by black the move f5, and let's use this game as sort of a attacking lesson. Pause the video maybe and try to see now the best next move here for white. It's a great move because what we always should notice here in these types of structures, we have the so-called blocked pawn structure. It means the center is blocked. So it's obvious that black is going to coordinate the attack towards the king side, because the pawn chain is showing us the direction of the attack. On the other hand, white will of course coordinate the attack towards the queen side. And there is actually now a great move for white. I hope you can really attack like Wesley. So of course I cannot, but as I said, I've analyzed this game with my Stockfish engine at home, so I know the next best move. So the next best move is actually a pawn sacrifice. It's the move c5, and it gives now Wesley so great opportunities in the continuation of the game. Here d takes c5 by Wesley. We have knight to c4, and you see now Wesley so created some weaknesses: the weak c5 pawn, the weak e5 pawn. We have opportunities to push the pawn on d6, then knight to d6, creating a dangerous check. And here Garry Kasparov played the move f6. He protects his e4 pawn, although probably a better way is simply to give up the pawn, then after something like knight to e5, maybe in some occasions knight to e4, and then the discovered attack against this knight. So at least here I think black can castle and black can secure the king. It is a risky still idea. White is much better because Garry Kasparov didn't play this opening so good. Here f6 weakens the pawn structure. Of course it protects the pawn on e5, but now we have some attacking opportunities here on light course. We want to bring maybe here a bishop to c4, or maybe here a queen on b3, and when the king castles, there are even some discovered attack possibilities with the move d6, and then the long diagonal, the long light square diagonal will get opened, and there are now maybe some dangerous check possibilities. So here after the move knight to c4, we said f6, and here Wesley goes d6. Although the engine and screw the engine suggests here something like castling and then maybe knight to c8. This would be sort of a line, but still I like of course more white's position because this pawn is weak. We could actually also try and search now an attack with the move f4, because black hasn't played the common f5 move. F5 move is not an opportunity anymore. It's the common King's Indian move, because then you're weakening your e5 pawn too. So as I said, here d6, it's maybe not the best of move, but it's a blitz game, and you know you're forcing now the beast from Baku to do something. d6 is going what to do, and here Garry Kasparov plays simply knight to c8. He wants to have a great protection of the d6, and now bishop to e3. We have b6 by Garry Kasparov, although probably b5 would be a much better move here. Then it leads into a line d takes c7, queen to c7, and now knight to a3. But still, although here black is up one pawn, these are clear targets. Actually, it's not so easy to protect this position with a6. Then we'll simply play rook to c1, attacking this pawn further. Still, black needs many tempi in order to secure the king with knight to e7 and then castling. So we could attack immediately these two connected pawns here on the b and c file of black. So it's actually again a great game, I think, for white. At least we know where to attack. So here after the move b6, it was not the best of moves, b5, and now Wesley simply castles. We have bishop to c6, again not the best of moves, knight to d6 by Gotti, knight to d6, he takes d6, but still queen to d6 will happen, and after queen to e7 you don't want to, of course, trade off the queens. When you're on the attacking side, maybe black could go now with the move f5, but now queen to d5, and the queen will sneak into the position. Even if the queen gets further attack, we have bishop to b5, queen to c6, so we can also double up here on the d file, getting use also here of the moves like knight to g5, bishop to g5. So again, black has trouble because black need at least, I don't know, one, maybe then kicking away the queen, so it would be the second tempo, and then in the third tempo to castle. But still, even if a castle, still king is endangered, I think. So bishop to c6 was now a huge mistake by Garry Kasparov, because Wesley so simply takes d takes e7, and if you trade off now the queens, it's actually already losing, because we'll simply take rook to d1, and you have to now play knight to e7 in order to prevent this idea. Rook to d8 is a serious threat, but when you play the move knight to e7, then knight to d6 is of course an opportunity. King to f8, you don't want to get your king, of course, where the rook is on this file, and now actually with bishop to c4 the game is over. There are many great opportunities. Knight to f7 attacking the rook, then also rook to d8. It's game over here for Garry Kasparov if this would be the continuation. So after d takes c7, you see taking out the queen is not an option. We have queen to c7, and now a monster move by Wesley, so b4. That's actually even the best move here. With this move, Wesley so splits the pawn structure on the queen side, creates now new madness. What his main goal is to include the rook into the games, getting the rook on the c file, because still you see Garry Kasparov hasn't castled, Garry Kasparov hasn't secured the king, and Wesley is simply attacking further the position. C takes b4, rook to c1. Here after the move knight to e7, here comes the idea. Queen to b3, you cannot castle anymore. It would be simply too late if you do that. Then knight from c to e5, discover attack here by the queen on the king. So it's something that you should resign immediately. Here Garry Kasparov plays the move h6, and what Wesley does is actually a great move. Again, he plays the best move. He plays rook from f to d1, because when we are on the attacking side, I think you should use always, at least when you have the opportunity, all of your pieces in the attack. So if you don't do that, then your attack could be splashed, your opponent could regroup, your opponent could bring some more pieces into the game, into the defense. So after the move rook to d1, look at this setup that Wesley so has built here. All of these pieces are playing in such beautiful harmony, and now when we have the pieces on the best square, then it's time to strike. Then you have to find now the best next attacking move here after move b5. Again, it's time for you to pause the video and find the best continuation here for white. So again, it was an inaccuracy by Garry Kasparov. Here the engine suggests something like a5, but that's not the point. Still, this is a much here position for white. So as said, after move b5, here it's time for you to attack this position. It's time for you to attack like here Wesley. So okay, I hope you can find this move, because it's a nice sacrifice. Knight to e5. So after f takes e5, we have bishop to b5. Wesley is continuing the attack, is continuing the pressure here against the weak c6 bishop. We have rook to b8, a counter attack, but now bishop to a6. Here Wesley stays on this long diagonal. If you take, of course, it's not such a powerful idea. We'll simply take. And your queen is hanging, so there is nothing they can do. You cannot bring your queen here, you cannot bring your queen here, so it's game over. In the game, Garry Kasparov tried to hang on to this position. He played queen to b7, and again, let's search now for the best next move for white. Again, pause the video. I think it's a great study how to attack in chess. So after move queen to b7, it's now for you the time again to strike here. Beat the beast from Baku. Okay, here Wesley so sacrifice the rook, because it's actually possible. We should always evaluate these types of positions, how many pieces are participating in the game, and when we watch that this rook is out of game, when the rook hasn't participated in the game, then it's actually like a position in which Garry Kasparov is playing without the whole rook, and that's actually the main issue. After the move knight to c6, here Wesley goes queen to e6, creates a check. Here we have knight to e7, and here after bishop to c5, rook to c8 was played, and now bishop to e7 in this position, Garry Kasparov resigned. So let's see now the possible continuation. You cannot take with the knight, of course. You have this annoying pin by the bishop. You can take out with the queen, but now queen takes c8. You can move the king here. Now bishop to b3. You see the like square problems that Garry Kasparov has here. King to f6, queen takes c6, queen to e6 could happen, and now after queen to e6 it would be a forced checkmate. So brilliant attack by Wesley against really such a sharp player like Garry Kasparov. But you see, of course, this wasn't the best Garry Kasparov. This was Garry Kasparov from 2016, but still in blitz games Garry can perform also very good still. Even in 2021 we have seen that he is a tough opponent in this Fischer Random Chess. He also played out, I think, a decent tournament. Here, I think Wesley so applied really the basic principles of the attack, getting all of your pieces in the attack. When the king is in the center, never ever allow your opponent to castles, really activate the pieces, opening files, opening diagonals, really beautiful elements of the chess game, and really a brutal gameplay by Wesley. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. If you like to maybe see more Wesley So games, write it in the comments section below. I would love to cover more Wesley games. I hope you agree with me, because recently he's been my favorite grandmaster, although he didn't win this tournament, but his chess was really beautiful. He really showed us great attacking skills. If you want to see Wesley So's Immortal from the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, here's also the link. It was a beautiful attack against Levan Aronian. Please also check it out. And if you want to see maybe the best chess games of all time, so I will add also this game into my list, the best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. You can also watch some previous games from the past, really beautiful attacks in chess history. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and the chess is the best, of course.